Now what does this question say? It says that Raghav buys a shop for rupees 1,20,000 and he pays half of the amount in cash. So he pays 60,000 rupees upfront in cash and agrees to pay the balance. How much would be the balance? The balance would be 1,20,000 minus the cash that he has paid. So it will be 60,000. So the balance of 60,000 he agrees to pay in 12 equal installments of rupees 5,000 each. If rate of interest is 12% per annum and he pays with the installment the interest due on the unpaid amount, find the total cost of the shop. Now what does this question? It is a bit complicated. Let's first understand what the question asks. The question says that there is a shop that Raghav buys for rupees 1,20,000. Out of the 1,20,000 that he has to pay, he pays 60,000 upfront to the person. So he has paid up 60,000 and he has a remainder of 60,000 to pay. So he agrees to pay the remainder 60,000 in equal annual installment of 5,000 each. So he will be taking 12 years to complete the total installment for the shop of 5,000 each. So he will be paying up the 60,000 rupees. But the 60,000 rupees that he didn't pay upfront, he'll have to pay an interest to the buyer, to the seller. So each year, in addition to the 5,000 rupee installment that he has to pay to cover for the cost of the shop, he also has to pay the interest on the amount that has not been paid to the seller. So he pays the 5,000 rupee installment as well as the interest that is due on the unpaid amount so far. And we have to calculate the total cost of the shop. So the total cost of the shop would be what? The 60,000 rupees that he pays upfront, the 5,000 rupee 12 annual installments, so that will be 60,000 again. So it will be 60,000 plus 60,000 and also the interest that he'll be paying each year on the unpaid amount. So we have to basically calculate the unpaid amount, the interest on the unpaid amount. So the total interest we have to calculate and then we'll be calculating the total cost of the shop. So how do we go about it? He pays half of the amount. So amount unpaid by Raghav at start of first year would be what? The total shop was for 1,20,000. He pays half of the amount. So he has rupees 60,000 as the unpaid amount. At the end of the year 1, he will be paying the first installment, but there will be an interest that will accrue, right? So there will be an interest at the end of 1 year. What will be that interest? Interest at the end of first year. How much would that be? It will be the total unpaid amount into the rate of interest into the time divided by 100, and this will come out to be 7,200. So this is the interest that he pays at the end of the first year. How do we calculate the interest at the end of second year? How do we do that? At the end of the second year, he will be paying up this is the amount. At the end of the first year, he paid this amount, right? 5,000 he paid in installment. So this was the unpaid amount that was left. So for 1 year, this will be the unpaid amount. So the entire second year, this would be the amount that has not been paid from the principal amount. So the interest will be charged on this amount. So it will be 60,000 minus the 5,000 that he has already paid at the end of the first year. And again the interest will be 12 and you get this. So it will be how much? 55,000 into 12. You will get rupees 6,600. So interest at the end of second year will be 6,600. This is the extra amount that he needs to pay. This is the interest he is paying. The principal he is paying 5,000 each year. This amount he has to pay. In addition to that, he also has to pay the interest on the unpaid amount. So at the end of the 2 year, how much money he paid out of the balance 60,000? He paid 5,000 at the end of the first year, 5,000 rupees at the end of the second year. So out of the balance 60,000 that he had to pay for the shop, he paid 10,000 rupees. So for the third year, how much will be the unpaid amount? The unpaid amount for the third year will be 60,000 minus 5,000 in the first year and then 5,000 in the second year. So it will be 10,000. The interest rate would remain same. It's simple interest, and this would come out to be 6,000. So as each year goes on, the interest will be calculated as follows. How many interests will he have to pay? He'll have to pay 12 interests, because he has to complete the entire payment in 12 annual installments. So what do you observe? The interest for each year turns out to be an AP. It turns out to be an AP. So this is how it will go on for him. And what will be the terms of the AP? Starting from 7,200, he'll be paying 6,600, he'll be paying 6,000, he'll be paying up to 12 terms, right? So the sum to 12 terms would essentially be the total interest that he needs to pay. And what would this be equal to? Which formula should we use? The number of terms is 12, so we'll be using n by 2 as 12 by 2. We don't know the last term, so we'll be using the other formula. So it's 2 into a plus n minus 1, and what is the common difference? Common difference is minus 600. So what do we get? 6, and here what do we get? 4, 400. We get how much? 7,200 into 2. So 7,200 into 2 is 14,400, and here you have 11 into minus 600. So you have 6,600 we have to subtract, right? So what do we get here? 7,800 into 6, and this would come out to be 46,800 rupees. So the interest that he has to pay for 12 years, the total interest that he needs to pay for 12 years would be 46,800. So what do we need to find out? We need to find out the total cost of the shop. What will be the total cost of the shop? The total cost of the shop will be the 60,000 that he paid upfront, the 12 installments of 5,000 that he pays annually, and the interest that has accrued, which is equal to 46,800 for the 12 years on the unpaid amount for each year. And what does this come out to be? It is 1,20,000, 1,66,800. So effectively the total cost of the shop turns out to be 1,66,800 rupees for Raghav. It is not 1,20,000 because he has to pay the interest on the remaining amount at the end of each year. It's a bit complicated question. You will have to understand, you have to get the basics of commercial arithmetic right to get a hang of this question. There is not much AP involved in it, but yes, there is. But the basic principle that guides here, the basic principle that you have to keep in mind while solving this kind of a question is that you have your basics for commercial arithmetic should be clear. So let's revisit this once again. There is a boy who needs to buy a shop which costs rupees 1,20,000. He agrees to pay 60,000 upfront, and the balance 60,000 he says that he will be paying in an annual installment of 5,000 rupees per year. Now the seller says that you will be paying me 5,000 rupees per year, but there will be an interest on the amount that you have not yet paid, and I want that interest also. So Raghav asks, what will be the interest that you will be charging me? He said the interest will be 12% per annum. So this is how you calculate. Amount unpaid, when he pays up the 60,000 rupees, he has a balance of 60,000 rupees to pay, so which he has decided to pay in equal installments of 5,000 rupees each. So for 12 years, he will be paying 5,000 into 12, so 60,000 rupees he will be paying as the installment for the shop. The second aspect that will come into picture is the interest that he needs to pay for the unpaid amount. What will be the interest at the end of first year? Since he has paid 60,000 upfront and for full year he did not pay anything, so the amount that was left to be paid was rupees 60,000. So this becomes the principal. The interest is 12, time is 1 year, you get an interest of 7,200 rupees. At the end of the first year, he pays 5,000 rupees out of the 60,000 principal amount that was there. So now 55,000 rupees is what is unpaid for. So for the entire second year, the principal amount will be 60,000 minus 5,000 rupees. And how much would be the interest? Principal in a rate of interest into time divided by 100, we get it as 6,600. At the end of the second year, he again pays 5,000 rupees from the basic principal amount that was there of rupees 60,000. So now in the second year he has paid 10,000 rupees, 5,000 in the first year, 5,000 in the second. So for the entire third year, the amount that he has not paid for is 60,000 minus 10,000 rupees, which is equal to 50,000 rupees. So the interest on 50,000 rupees will turn out to be 6,000. So we see here that with each passing year, the interest forms an AP. Now we have to calculate the total cost of the shop, which means we have to calculate the total interest that has been charged to him. Now that interest will be the sum of 12 terms of this AP, because he has to pay in 12 annual installments. So the number of terms in that sequence, in that sum, in that AP would be 12. So now we have to find the sum to 12 terms of the AP, whose first term is 7,200, second is 6,600, the third is 6,000, and so on for 12 terms. Now calculating that would be very simple using the formula for n terms of an AP. So S12 is calculated as n by 2, 2a plus n minus 1 into d, where n is equal to 12, a is equal to 7,200, and the common difference is 6,600 minus 7,200, that's minus 600. If you simplify and calculate it, you will get it as 46,800. So the total interest that he pays on the amount that is left over at the end of each year would be rupees 46,800. So when we calculate the total cost of the shop, what do we have to do? We have to calculate the 60,000 that he had paid upfront, the 5,000 rupee installment that he pays for 12 years, and the interest that has accrued over the period of 12 years, which is rupees 46,800. When we add these three, we get 1,66,800 rupees as the total cost of the shop. So I hope you got this question. Now let's take another question and try to expand your horizons and get the concept of arithmetic progression deeper into your mind. In this particular question, we are also going to use a mixed concept of quadratic equations as well as arithmetic progressions. Let's see what the question is. The question says there are 200 logs of wood that are stacked in the following manner. We have 20 logs in the bottom row. So there is the bottom row which has 20 logs. The row just above it will have 19 logs. The one above it will have 18 logs, and so on. So in how many rows are we going to stack all the 200 logs of wood so that they are completely stacked without any problem? So essentially how the arrangement would look like is this. You have 20 logs of wood in the bottom row. You have 19 logs of wood in the second last row. We have 17 in the one above it, and so on till we stack the 200 logs of wood. So what is given is we can transform it into a sum of n terms of an AP. How do we do that? The total number of logs of wood, we can assume it to be Sn, and Sn will be equal to 200 because there are 200 logs of wood that we have to arrange. The first row will have 20 logs of wood, so A will be 20. The common difference, what will be the common difference? We are going to go on, decrease it by 1. So the common difference would be 1 because 19 minus, this will be the first row, this will be the second row, right? Second has 19, the first one has 20. So 19 minus 20 would give you minus 1. So you have this particular relation. And we go on adding it and we have to reach to a point wherein we get 200. So you use the formula Sn is equal to n by 2, 2a plus n minus 1 into d. So what do we get? Sn would be how much? Let's do it here. Sn is 200, n we don't know, 2a is 2 into 20 plus n minus 1 into minus 1. What do we get now? 400, we bring the 2 this side, is equal to n 40 minus n minus 1, which is equal to n 40 minus n plus 1. 40 minus n plus 1. Or we get 400 is equal to 41 minus n into n, right? Can we form a quadratic equation? Yes, if we simplify, we get this equation. N square minus 41n plus 400 is equal to 0. Now, using the quadratic formula, how do you get it? This will be the value of n that you will be getting. How much is 41 square? 41 square is 1681. So you get 1681 minus 1600 divided by 2, which is 41 plus minus 6181 minus 1600 is 81, and square root of 81 would be 9. So you have n equal to 25, or n would be equal to, how much do you get? The other value would be 32 by 2, 16. So you get two values of n. N can be 25 or n can be 16. Now, we have to find out how many logs are there in the top row. The top row would be the last row that we have. So the last row would be what? This is the last row, right? The first row will have 20. If 25 is the value of n, we get 24 into minus 1, which is equal to minus 4. Hence, the value of n equal to 25 will not be possible, because we have to find, there are two values of n, which is not possible. There has to be one value of n, but we have got two. That means one of the values is going to be an extraneous value, which is not going to be valid for this particular question. Now, how do we understand which value is possible and which value is not? We simply substitute it. The top row will be the last row, and the last row, for the last row, the number of logs will be given by a plus n minus 1 into d. Now, a is 20, n is 25, so 25 minus 1 would be 24, and the common difference is minus 1. And in this case, you get the last row will be having minus 4 logs, which is not possible. Now, let's see what we get when we use n equal to 16. If you use n is equal to 16, you would get 20 minus 16, that's 4, which is possible because the last row can have 4 logs. It can't have minus 4 logs. So the possible value of n here would be 16. So we obtain two values of n, but one of them has to be left out because in the practical scenario we can't have negative values of logs. There is a constraint that we have put in the value of n. The n could be two values, 25 and 16. But in this particular problem, there is a constraint on n that it cannot be, there's a constraint on the number of on the term, and the term cannot be negative. Any term cannot be negative because each term specifies the number of logs in a row, and number of logs in a row cannot be negative. Hence, any value of a which is negative is not possible. That puts a constraint on the value of n. Hence, we have to substitute each value of n in our given condition and check whether the constraint is violated or not. And what is the constraint? The constraint is for the last row of logs. The last row of logs will have a plus n minus 1 into d logs. If n is equal to 25, we obtain a negative value of an, which means that the last row of the logs will have negative number of logs, which is not possible. Hence, that value of n is rejected. We substitute the other value of n, that is n is equal to 16, and we see that we obtain a positive value of an. Hence, n is equal to 16 is a valid value. So, the answer to how many rows into which 200 logs of wood would be arranged will be 16, n is equal to 16. And how many logs are there in the top row? We can use this formula and we see that the number of logs in the last row is going to be 4. So, this is how you solve this question. Now, let's see a few more questions, and then probably we'll be taking up the proficiency test, and then the chapter will be over. So, let's go to the next question.